Hello, and welcome to another episode of French Ear Trumpet. I'm joined as usual by Colin from French Countryside Live. But today we've got a returning guest, Glen. And now we have Glen on the channel. Thanks for coming on because we did an episode about the current events in America. Although we received a comment from a viewer which was really nice. Really said that we approached the subject quite well and we've done a bit of research. And then we thought, well, do you know what? We're not really super qualified in that respect to comment on what's happening in America. So who do we know that's American that could help us out on this?
Yeah,
So welcome,
his finger
Glenn.
in, got his finger on the pulse there. I mean, there's a saying in London that says, "I want to speak to the organ grinder, not the monkey."
Yes, that's very applicable. And
So,
we were just before we started this episode, just discussing when was the last time that we spoke to Glenn, and he said that it was just before the election, and by
what
election,
election was
everyone's
that
saying,
then? Was there an election?
yeah, just before,
I think it was the same week as the election,
Wow.
within like 2 or 3 days. So yeah.
yeah, it was. I think thinking back, yeah, it probably was. Yeah, it was. Yeah, and then things went downhill from there. Right.
Good description.
Okay. So most of these conversations not being instigated by Colin, but by me because I follow a lot of Facebook posts for expat groups. And one of the things I've noticed is that a lot more Americans are looking to move over to France. And I just want to know, as the first question is, why do you think that is?
Um, my gut answer is, France has been very accepting and has a very broad perspective on the world events. It's very accepting of people. Yeah, there are issues here, like in any other country. But France has its act together. That's the best way to describe it. There's a lot of things that have happened in the US over the last few years, but particularly in the last 12 months,
Mhm.
that are disturbing and disturbing to the American population, with the exception of, I hate to use this word, MAGA, those people that, make America great again, but they're all devout Republicans. And, people are losing health care benefits. They're, you know, losing jobs because the economy is tanking. The, the whole situation with ICE,
Yeah.
and that's huge because it's targeting anyone that's basically not white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. You know, basically what I'm going to put it this way, what Hitler was looking for. You have to be blonde, blue-eyed, you know, fit this little mold. And if you're not anything but white, you're questionable.
Yeah. Do you know what? We can only go, obviously, we don't have any contact, well, not many contacts over there, so we have to go on what we see in the news. And that can always be, depending on which news outlet you follow, can either be pro or against the current administration. And
Hmm.
specifically, you just mentioned there, MAGA. The words
Right.
MAGA, make America great again. But that's nothing new, is it? I think that was brought over from Reagan. I think Reagan's slogan was make America great again. I think that's
I don't know that. That was a few years back,
yeah.
but um, you
I've
know,
got his,
Trump has
what,
pirated it, and if he's plagiarized it, that wouldn't surprise me.
I've got this theory, Glenn, that it takes at least 25 years for a leader's legacy to be recognised. So
Hmm.
when you look back at the Thatcher Reagan days, I mean, I lived through them. I lost a house to the economic controls that they used. So at the time in the UK, I think it was Nigel Lawson was the chancellor, and inflation was starting to get a bit out of hand. So they used interest rates to control inflation to stop people spending and so on. And interest rates went up from certainly mortgage interest rates went up from about three
Right.
and a half percent up to 15.75%, and I ended up losing my house because of it.
Hmm.
Uh, so what I'm saying is, at the time, it was an awful time to live. But when people look back now, you know, almost 40 years later, um, it looks like a great time to be alive, you know? So what do you see in 25 years' time? Do you think people are going to look back at the Trump years and go, you know what, it actually wasn't that bad?
Good
Um,
question.
I think that's
Or will it just be
stretching
like a
it.
smoking ruin where America used to be?
Do you remember that scene? Did you ever see the movie Planet of the Apes?
Yeah, of
Yeah.
course, yeah.
Okay,
Oh, I know
remember
what
the
you're going to
scene at the
say.
very end with the
Yeah.
Statue of Liberty's head sticking out of the beach?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, there you
Okay,
go.
that's what I see in my
Yeah.
head.
Okay. Okay.
But go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I was just going to pick up on something that you just as I mentioned. So you said the economy in the US is tanking. Is that correct?
The
Because
cost of
you don't hear anything about that
the
in the
cost of
media.
living, grocery prices, for instance. And I was just watching this afternoon a news clip about done just last week. The difference in prices for groceries here in France for, you know, your basic weekly groceries
Yep.
compared to what the same family would buy for a weekly basis in the United States. And and they did product by product. And in the United States, most of the grocery prices were anywhere from about 60 to 70% higher to more than double. Now,
Wow.
some instances, and this is all what's happened in the past 12 months. Um, in some instances, the prices were comparable, some products, and a few, the US had a couple products that were a little less expensive, but not by much. Majority of the products have really skyrocketed. Things that a family needs on the weekly basis to live, eat. And that's not like
That is,
going out and buying, extras. That's just buying your basics that you need for food to feed a
yeah.
family.
How does that compare to the to the previous administrations
It's much higher.
economy?
And when I moved here 3+ years ago, grocery prices were still lower here for the cost of living. Um, but at the same time, the US wasn't that much higher, and there were the same, a few products that were similar and some in the US that were lower. But for the most part, they were comparable. That
Right.
difference is very drastically changed.
I
Can
happen
I
to know
just ask?
that.
Sorry.
Sorry, Andy, go on, mate. You carry
I
on.
was just going to ask a question because I see this a lot on the Facebook. The quality of the groceries here compared to what you would, I suppose it depends where in America you live. I'm not totally stupid, but um, a lot of people comment that the quality or the freshness of the products here is much better than you would probably buy in a supermarket in America. On average, I mean, obviously there's going to be.
That's a very accurate statement. Um, you know, Products here much fresher. The products here in France don't have the preservatives
Exactly
that
right. I was going to say
many
that.
of the US products have. These are fresh. These are good for you. Whereas the United States, you have a lot of preservatives that are not
Yeah.
good for the body. Um, and it's a lot of frozen goods here. You don't have that much in frozen goods. I mean, there are, but for the most part, people are eating fresh foods here. You
Yeah.
go to the market, like here where I am, there's two markets a week within 5 minutes of me, and you're going more frequently, but you're buying
Absolutely.
fresh products.
Yeah. Have you noticed that you can buy anything in a tin in France?
What's that?
You can buy any any kind of vegetable you want in a tin in France. The supermarket aisles of tins, you get this. It's a kaleidoscope of vegetables, isn't it?
Yes, that's true.
That's true.
But if you want fresh vegetables, you have to learn to cook seasonally,
That's it.
because
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ah,
yeah.
yes, yes, that's a
It's
good
very
point.
seasonal. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's very, very seasonal. So, and I mean, I found that you'll buy something, bring it home within a couple of days. It's starting to wither a bit.
yep,
So you need to buy it and cook it,
that's
which is
why
which is really good, isn't it? Which is really good. It just shows that it is fresh. There's no preservatives, and yeah,
and that's
brilliant.
why people go to market more frequently here, 2, 3 times a week. You know, when I lived in New York, because you'd have very little cabinet space and storage space in the city, in apartments. So you went regularly, like every 2 to 3 days, and bought what you needed. Well, it's a similar thing here, but it took me a little period of time to adjust to that after living in a part of the United States where everyone had, you know, multiple freezers and large refrigerators and walk-in pantries. You could stock up on all this stuff, canned goods, frozen goods. Um, but at the same time, they sit in the cabinet, they sit in the freezer for God knows how long before you actually eat them. And here you're buying and eating within a couple of days, and then you're replenishing with, you know, good fresh products.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation, and I can agree with that. So I've got a job here, I work full time, and part of your job is that the employer pays for your meal at lunchtime.
Mhm. Oh,
So
nice.
yeah, and that's the rules. So every
Excellent.
day they go to the local supermarket to. It's like a U Express. So they've got a card and you just go in.
Like a super oo or
Yeah, that's it. But U Express is like the smaller version of it.
okay.
And you go in there, you've got a card, and you can pick what you want for lunch, and it gets charged back to the company. You don't pay for it. But it's interesting to note that the team that I'm with are all French, and how they approach the dinner and the lunchtime meals. And there's a big discussion if there's no fresh bread, somebody's got to go and get it. I mean, yesterday's bread is just not gonna cut
Got
it,
it.
you know. And it's quite interesting to see that as an English person, where you grab a sandwich at your desk, 30 minutes tops, even if you stop. I mean, and maybe it's the same in America, something similar to that. You just eat on the go. Here, everything
Very much
stops.
so.
It's if you're allowed an hour, they're going to take an hour. And there is definitely an entree, the main course, then you've got cheese, and then you've got dessert. And that is every day, you know.
Yeah, it seems like lunch here, déjeuner, is the big meal of the day for many people
It is,
in
yeah,
France.
yeah.
And it's, particularly here in my area in south of France, people have that hour to 2 hour lunch. You have your big meal because then at night you're going to eat light. Um, and that's kind of been an adjustment because in the US, you eat at your desk, in like 10 minutes, you
Yeah.
down some
Oh,
yogurt,
it's
some fruit
changed.
or whatever, and then you have that big meal in the evening, with your family or whomever. The difference being, I like the lunchtime big meal. I mean, there are occasions when you are going to go out to dinner here and have a substantial meal. But I like the fact that you're not going to bed on a full stomach and feel like a basketball rolling around.
Yeah, that's true.
Like, oh, I gotta go to sleep. Oh,
Excellent.
that's just that's just how and then if you eat that large meal at lunch, which, you know, that's when I usually go to the grocery stores during the lunch hour because I know everyone that's working is having a meal somewhere.
Yeah.
Um, it's you have the afternoon for it to burn off, you know, through energy, physical work that you're doing. And you actually feel better on days like when you can do that.
I
I
remember
completely
that.
agree. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. The other side of that is I remember I was building an arbor for this French couple to put their horses in. And at lunchtime, I went and got my sandwiches, and they said, no, come on, come sit and eat with us. So I went and sat down, and the lady at the house was of Algerian descent. And so I sat down at the table, and she brought out this big tagine, ox cheek, whatever it
Yeah.
was. And she poured me a great big glass of red wine. And so I'm eating all this food, and I had a couple of glasses of red wine. And
And then you
then,
want to take a nap.
yeah, and then after we'd finished, with the dessert and a couple of coffees and that, the fella said, "Right, let's get back to work." I was like, "I just want to lay down. I just want to
Exactly.
go to sleep for 2 hours."
That is
Yeah, it's
very
definitely
true.
it's definitely a culture shock, I think, for both for English and Americans coming over and see how important the meals are. Anyway, getting back to it. Got to drag it back to the subject. I just quickly checked, and "Make America Great Again" was originally used by Ronald Reagan in the 1980 presidential campaign.
There you go.
So yeah.
There's nothing new under the sun, is there?
But it's interpreted differently now.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's not the same thing, I don't think at all. But one of the things which we're now going to probably touch on is that at the same time, I've seen a video, and you might have seen it, you might not, of Ronald Reagan explaining why tariffs are a really bad idea. Because it was muted in his original campaign. Oh, sorry, in his original presidency that he should invoke tariffs. And it is out there on YouTube and wherever. He actually addressed the nation and said, "Look, I'm definitely not going to do this because it's in effect a tax on American people."
It is. It is hurting the American public because they can't get they can't get products and they're having to pay for it.
Yeah.
Because the companies raise the price to cover tariffs, then the American public has to pay for it.
I think there's a big misconception of what a tariff actually is. So most people think that, oh, right, we're going to slap tariffs on foreign produce. They think that the foreign people have to pay the money. And
That's the misperception.
that's the perception. Like, well, yeah, why don't those foreigners have to pay the money to sell their product here? So it gives an advantage to the local producers or whoever. But in effect, what it actually means is those people in America that produce it um, have to pay the tax. Or
Hmm.
import it, they have to pay the tax. And then eventually that filters down to the American or the British person, whoever the tax is, and they pay it because the price goes up.
Exactly.
It's not,
Exactly.
it's not a question of someone else paying the tax from outside. It's all
Coming out of the
inside
American public's
the
pocket.
yeah, exactly, and that leads to inflation, which is what you've just mentioned. Everything becomes more expensive.
Mm.
Exactly. You know, along those same lines, most countries in the EU are no longer using or shipping products to the United States via the Postal Service. You can do
Yeah,
it
there's a
through a
tax on
private
that.
shipper like UPS or Colissimo. Um, but if you want to, and I've had several instances of this happening just personally where I want to ship something to my brother or sister, or you know, a cousin that asked me to pick something up for them, and I can't ship it. I have to go and find a shipping company like Colissimo or UPS or FedEx, because once it gets to the United States, if it is over a certain dollar value, which is not that high, I think if I remember correctly, last time I sent something, which was just 2 weeks ago, if it was below 100 euros, you would not get taxed once it reached the United States. But if it was over 100 euros, then you had to pay an additional tariff in the United States. So say this friend of mine that I got something for, it was like 15 euros here. That went through without a problem. But another friend of mine asked for something. I said, okay, I'll do it. But it was like 105 euros, 110 euros in cost here.
Wow.
And they were going to be taxed that same amount in the United States
Oh, crikey.
when it would be delivered to them. And
So,
conversely, a friend of mine sent something to me, and I don't know which end it was coming from, but when it arrived to me, it was like a $30 item, and I had to pay $30 in tariffs on this end.
Yeah,
yep.
yeah.
So,
Yeah,
so
that
let
sounds
me
right.
let me just explain that because I've had the exact same thing happen to me. So I wanted an item from America. It was only produced in America, and I needed it, so I ordered it from America, and they gave me a bill. Let's say I'm going to say 100 euros just for this.
Round numbers.
They packaged it, and then there's 20 euros delivery from America. So it gets sent. And then in that time, I was so unlucky. The EU announced retaliatory tariffs
Tariff.
after it had been shipped, but before it got here. So I was in the situation where the shipping company, this time was UPS, I think it was. They sent me an email saying, "Yeah, we've got your stuff. You can have it, but you need to pay another 20 euros on top." And I'm like,
Yeah.
"What?" And that money, it was itemized, goes to somewhere in the EU. It doesn't go to America. It goes to somewhere in the EU, somewhere, I don't know. So
Okay.
that illustrates the tariff is within that country that levies it. So the tariffs that Donald Trump's setting out will be paid by people and companies in America, and that just illustrates what I've just said, that the retaliatory tariffs that were in the EU are paid by the people and the population of the EU,
Exactly.
and it is ridiculous. Each
Mhm.
side is taxing their own people in like some kind of really bizarre trade war that and
That's a
this
good
is
way to
what
describe it, a bizarre trade war.
yeah, and this is what Ronald Reagan was saying back in 1980, whatever
80
it was.
something.
He's saying it doesn't do anyone any good. It doesn't work. You're just taxing your own people, in effect, paraphrasing.
Right.
It's almost
Uh,
like no one really knows what they're doing.
Yeah, most people, as Andy alluded to earlier, was most people think the other country, the shipper, is
yeah,
having to pay.
Yeah, yeah.
and
Um,
it's
it's
just
just
so
not
odd.
thinking in their head.
And it's
So,
very similar to the Donald Trump now. He said to President Macron, I'm not sure if you're aware of the last meeting they had where they discussed the price of medicines.
yeah, I do remember something about that.
I haven't seen any specifics on that, but that goes into the healthcare side.
Oh, I mean, the healthcare is a two different world. I mean, we can probably do a whole episode on that.
Oh,
But
exactly.
the last visit, Macron went to see Trump or whatever, and they said, and Trump said, "Look, we don't like the fact that you're selling our drugs really, really cheap. So instead of America lowering the price of drugs, we want you as France to lift the price of drugs." And obviously Macron went, no, I don't think so. No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
you're all right.
And in the United States, big pharma basically runs the health system. You know, the cost of a drug dictates a large part of what the cost is going to be in the hospital or daily, weekly medicinal requirements. And it just keeps going up.
Right, quick question. Sorry, Colin. I know you've got some questions, but just last
All
one.
right. No, go on,
Um,
crack on.
I heard a story that in American healthcare, you pay for literally everything. So on your bill at the end of this, even the person that opens the door to let you in, there's something on the bill for your healthcare. It gets down to that kind of granular level on the bill. Is that
Mhm.
actually true, or is that someone making that kind of stuff up?
I would say it's probably like 70% true. They do itemize everything in the United States on the healthcare, hospital bills, whatever. Um, and when you compare the two, and just from personal experience here, 2 years ago when I had the foot injury right after I moved here, but I didn't get to the hospital. Probably would have been better if I'd gotten to the hospital if I didn't think it was broken. Anyway, um, I was in the hospital for 2 weeks in
Wow.
Carcassonne, which required two surgeries to my foot. Um, I was in, slang terms, I was fresh off the boat here in France. So I didn't have a carte vitale yet. Um, and I was having to pay for it out of pocket because the US healthcare company insurer that I had who said, yes, we cover all your expenses in the EU refused to cover. So after 2 weeks in the hospital, plus three
Outrageous.
months of visiting nurses coming to my house every single day to change bandages, um, I had to pay out of pocket. It was 16,000 euros for 3 months worth of health care. In the
Right.
United States, $16,000, we'll just convert it to dollars at this point, because at that point it was almost 1 to 1 dollar to euro. 16,000 is maybe 2 days in a hospital. No other
Wow.
services, just
Yeah,
a hospital stay.
yeah.
Oh my God.
That's why you see so many families having to file bankruptcy and losing their houses or, you know, just the worst you can imagine.
See, that's something I can never understand in a developed country or the biggest economy, the biggest country in the world. People lose their houses and go bankrupt for healthcare.
Yeah.
For a British person, even paying, I don't know, 50 quid, £50, that's a big ask because everything's free in
Hmm.
the UK. But in France, well, if you work, it's free normally anyway. But like you said, if you're just fresh off the boat, then you have to pay. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
Yeah. Fortunately, the money's was in the bank, is in the bank, whatever. But it was a good way to compare what I had just left to what I was now
Yeah.
experiencing.
Yeah.
Um, and that's an extremely valuable lesson in my back pocket, to take with me. Now and right after I got out of the hospital, I got my Carvital.
Of course.
I was like, come on.
Nice present for you when you get home back from the hospital.
Exactly. And that actually covered like the last 6 weeks or so of the visiting nurses, coming in to take care of my foot. Um, But up, that's 16,000. Jesus Christ.
I don't know. I don't know how.
And some of the American health insurers, like I'm a diabetic, so I'm a type 1 diabetic. So you know, I take a medication every day. Some of the health insurers in the United States have quit covering and paying for diabetic drugs
In America.
in America.
Oh my God.
What do
More
people
people
do
will
that for?
Luckily,
die.
mine is not
Just
bad,
die or something?
but think about those people who are type 2 diabetics or severe type 1 who have multiple insulin injections, medications, and suddenly they're paying for all of that out of pocket. It's crazy.
I'm going to fling some facts and figures at you, Glenn.
Okay.
So, approximately 5 to 9 million Americans live abroad at the moment.
Okay.
That breaks down to Mexico, 1.2 million, Canada, 1 million, UK, 300,000, Portugal, apparently it's quite popular because of something called a D7 passive income visa, Spain, Costa Rica, and Panama. Strangely, Venezuela isn't on the list. Um, Italy, mostly driven by the €1 home revitalisation project.
Hmm.
And France, apparently in France, there's 100 to 110,000 Americans living in France. That goes up to about 190 if you count Americans with dual citizenship and so on. In 2025, there were 15,000 or approximately 15,000 residency permits issued, which was a 14% increase on the previous year. So they're all coming. They're all coming to France.
Yeah. Again, well, you know, I'm happy that they're wanting to move here because, you know, if they're going to be happy with it. I'm not happy about it because I don't, I like being one of the few.
Yeah, no, I completely get where you're coming from there.
I'm
Yeah,
glad you
In
guys
addition,
said it
what's
because
that?
I was going to say the same thing.
yeah,
I like being one of the few, the proud, whatever.
yeah.
Um, but I was having a conversation with someone in Carcassonne recently at the prefecture about the number of applications for their carte séjour that they're,
Yeah.
and I just renewed mine I had a visa the first year and I just renewed my carte séjour for the third time. Um, and that's why I was in this conversation. And, you know, the ministry has tightened the requirements. I was planning to apply for nationality in 2 more years. Um, but now they've thrown this curveball in about your source of your income has to be from French sources.
Yeah.
We were talking about that last week, funny enough.
Well, my income is in the United States, from the United
Mm.
States, and all my retirement funds are there. Um,
Mm.
I don't know, I'm shooting for it because between now and then something else could change. So
But
that's what I'm
no,
hoping for.
not only that, there's new requirement for language tests for visas. It gives me the overall impression that they're not fed up, but they
They're trying to
recognize,
control it, aren't they?
yeah, that
Right.
Yeah,
there's a
trying to control
lot.
it.
It's not just Americans, by the way. We're not trying to, it's anyone
It's across
from,
the board, really.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, just here in Aksat, there's, I know what properties are for sale or have just recently undergone agreement. And most of the properties that are now under agreement that have been on the market for sale are being purchased by Americans.
Mm.
Mm.
Uh, I will say this, the current mayor is very open, very complimentary of the expat slash immigrant community that has come here because there's a lot of second homes here from people of other nationalities. And everyone brings in money and, renovates the properties, restores the properties, and it's good for the village. It brings in new businesses. But I like the fact that when I walk out my door with Drake first thing in the morning to go for a walk, until I lock the door when I go to bed at night, anytime I'm outside, I'm having to speak French. Okay, it's not the best, but it gets better with each passing week. Um, Keon, which is 10 kilometers from here, um, has a huge Anglo population, and they all like to go there. It's a village of like 3,000 people, acts at 600-ish. Um, and people say they like to go to Keon simply for the fact that they don't have to learn French.
Yeah, yeah. There's a village in Dordogne called Aimé, and that's got a huge population of British people, and it's got the loudest restaurants. People like British people shouting at each other
Hmm.
in the restaurants. It's just
I am.
How
and I went
how
there
would
once,
it,
and that was it.
quite right, little question for you then, Glenn. How would that go over in America if it was the other way around?
It depends on the nationality.
I know what
Some
you're
na-
gonna say. Yeah.
some nationalities
Mm.
are more readily welcome than others. Um, if the There's no way to get around it. Um, if the color of your skin isn't white or Caucasian, then you may not be as welcome
Yeah,
in
I
the
think you're
current
probably right.
environment. In the current environment.
I think I think what surprised me because I've only been to America once, and we was there for quite a while, and all of my previous experience with Americans was having them as clients, and they was all much like yourself, well educated, well travelled, articulate, had a worldview, and I just thought all Americans were like that. And when I went there, there's a lot of stupid people there, sadly,
Hmm.
and it was quite surprising. It was quite surprising.
And the more rural areas of the US are even
Oh,
more
God,
so.
yeah. Yeah, I mean, we went to this little gas station out in the Midwest in the early hours of the morning. And I was talking to this guy that was working the gas station. And, when he realized that, like, when I opened my mouth and he realized I was English, he said, oh, so I said to him, oh, what do you do for your vacations? And he said, oh, the family rents a log cabin up by the lake. I said, oh, great. Anyway, and from further conversation, it turned out that he'd only ever been, I think, 50 miles from where he was born.
That's
So he'd
not
spent his
unusual for
entire
the rural
life
areas.
within a circumference of 100 miles, you know?
Yeah.
And in a way, you could say that's a sign of the success of the American dream, is because everything that he wanted in his life was in that 100 miles. But because I said to him, well, it's a really big world. You should go and see some of it. And he said to me, well, you should come and see the log cabin. And that was his entire experience.
He's right.
Yeah. Talking about language, I noticed, Andy, when you was talking earlier that you said the word producteurs rather than
Oh,
so which is the French word for people that produce
Right.
food. Yeah. So have you noticed, Glenn, that you've started forgetting English words? So you have to think what the English word is for something.
Yeah,
Uh,
yes, yes. I actually find myself each day speaking a blend of French and English.
Yeah.
But with each passing week, it's more French.
Mm.
Unless I'm talking with like a family member, back at home
Of
in the
course, yeah.
United States or your friends in the United States. But even some of them speak French. So we're doing this mixed hybrid of the two languages.
Yeah.
And there are days when my French is really good, and there are days when I couldn't even tell you my name. It's just I wake up one morning like, oh, that French brain wave is not working today. And then other days
Uh,
it's like, and it
yes,
and I
yes.
never know until I actually walk out the door which one it's really going to be.
Do you know, just quickly, because we're going to move on to some American questions, but exactly what you just said. So I go into work some days, I get there and everyone has coffee at 8 o'clock in the morning, and I can tell how the day's going to be based on what my French is like. What the boss, I talk to the boss and I say, he'll say something like, "Well, what have you got on today?" And I'll say something and he goes, "What? I don't understand." And I just know that whole day is going to be super difficult because
Mhm.
for some reason that day I'm just not speaking the right French. And I'm like, oh no.
It's like
It's always a Monday
disconnect
as well.
somewhere in there.
Always a Monday.
Yeah,
Anyway,
but
good question then. So,
there's a lot of people
uh,
that live in Keon that just, and it's not just Anglophones, it's people from some other countries as well. They don't want to learn French because
mm,
they can go to the grocery store, they can go to market, they can walk down the street, they can go to a cafe and do everything they want to do in English.
yeah,
I'm like, that's kind of the wrong attitude to take.
yeah, I know. It's difficult, isn't it? Anyway, just a quick question for you then. Donald Trump, third term or not, is he going to
I
make
hope
it?
not. I mean, constitutionally, he cannot. Um, but you know, he seems to think he's oblivious to anything that's in the Constitution, and you know,
He has made comments that there are methods. Those are his exact words.
yep. I
Oh,
hope, I hope
Any
that Congress keeps that in check.
any laws though are only as good as the enforcement of those laws, aren't they?
Right. That's correct.
I mean, you look at ICE. What's your t ICE to me seems like some kind of paramilitary organization under the direct control of the administration. But that's how it comes across in the news. I'm not sure if it,
Pretty much. That's pretty
yeah.
accurate. Um, Christy Nome, who is a head of Homeland Security, is a minion of Trump,
Hmm.
as is Pam Bondi, the Attorney General. Um, any number of other public officials fall into that category where they're just minions of his. They're like a Stepford wife. Tell
Yeah.
them what they have to say today and then wind them up at the little key in your back and they go after it. Now, I will say that in local elections, um, where a congressman, be it House of a senator or a House of the House, have had people that die during the past year, until they've had to have special elections to, fill those Senate and House seats. And in almost all instances, they're going to Democrats and
Interesting.
traditional long-term Republican districts. So now there's Democrats in there. And I think what Trump has said is, if the Democrats take the majority in the midterm elections, which will be towards the end of this year, that he could be impeached. Now, I have no doubt about it. He will be impeached and forced out of office. The next question is that leaves JD Vance.
I
Mhm.
I would actually arguably say he's probably worse, if I'm
Yeah,
honest.
I saw him. I just watched a little clip of the opening of the Winter Olympics where
Mm.
he was massively booed
Yeah.
during
Yeah, I
opening
saw it. Yeah,
ceremony.
yeah. Yeah, yeah. I saw it.
And the expression on his face was like, oh, how dare they?
Well. Yeah. It's crazy. So, what do you think about, I mean, generally ice then? This idea that there's this force that just can go and pick people up that they think are immigrants that aren't supposed to be here has led
Immigrants or
to
criminals or,
many deaths, and in some cases, the American citizens, actual citizens, have been killed because of
yeah,
this.
yeah,
I mean, that is just,
it's insane. And when you look at someone like, what's her name? Caroline Levitt, who
yep.
is a spokesperson for the White House. And she and some of her colleagues have made comments, well, that's just the way it is. They were a bad person. Sorry, you've just broken the constitutional requirements for due process, and you think they've done something bad? It's really insane, and it's a parallel to the Gestapo during the Nazi era.
I think before that you had the brown shirts, which were the SA, the Stumbalong or something like that, and they were supporters of before uh, mm, before he came to power. They were the people that carried out all his orders and did whatever he wanted to say. They referred to the brown shirts. And they're the ones that got him to power. But it's very similar, like you say, somewhere in amongst there is some kind of quasi military organization that carries out the will of the supreme leader. And I see
Hmm.
that. I see, like you say, I see it. I mean, it's very disconcerting that you could just be driving down the street and
Get pulled
suddenly
over.
get renditioned like, by some random guys.
Yeah,
And they
you
did.
get pulled over for no apparent reason. They didn't like the color of your skin. They didn't like your car. Um, they suspected because of where you might be that you could be, an immigrant with that's not legally in the country or have some sort of criminal background.
It'd be
Hmm.
interesting to see the figures of if those figures are even released, of the amount of people that are picked up and then released.
Yeah, and I don't know if I haven't seen anything with the comparison of who's been
Yeah,
picked up and how many have been released.
yeah.
I don't,
That's
I haven't seen anything on that, but they're
not
probably guarding
publicised, is
that
it?
pretty carefully.
Yeah. Yeah.
What do
Anyway,
you? Oh, sorry, mate.
go off at a tangent,
Go ahead.
which is something that we are
Prone
prone
to
to
doing.
do. Yeah, prone to do. Um, I'm going to take this opportunity to, well, first of all, to thank Glenn for doing this because it's a real pleasure, certainly for me. I know for Andy. Um,
Thank you.
what I wanted to do was to take advantage of uh, both of your experience. Glenn, I know you're a trained, is it historical architect?
Historic preservation,
Historic
that
preservation.
that facet of architecture.
Yeah. Yeah. So um, I've been looking at this property. Now I guess you'd describe it as a bungalow because it's all on one level. But
Okay.
when you look at the scroll through, 'cause, on some listings, they got, like you press on a screen, you can go through another room. Well, it looks like it's a bungalow that's built inside a barn. Right? Yeah, because it's when you go to the workshop at the very end, you can see up above the roof or above the ceiling, if you like,
Okay.
of the rooms, and there's a steel roof that runs the entire length of the of the building. Now,
Okay.
my question is, what are your thoughts on a residential building with an entire steel framed and steel clad roof?
Is is it built around or over the other structure, or is it just like an extension of?
No, it's like the house is built inside the. If you've got a barn and then built a bungalow inside it,
So it's been repurposed as a residence.
I would guess, yeah, that's what it
Okay.
looks like. Yeah, but I'm really more interested in the steel roof factor of it against a conventional tile roof.
Um, is the material on the roof metal, like
Yes,
landing
yeah,
seam?
yes. Like what?
There's I don't have a problem with those.
Mm,
Uh, if you go back on the US side, historically, you know, going back into the 1800s and early 1900s, many buildings had standing seam roofs because they had a lifespan, you know, almost eternity.
yeah.
Uh, and just a property that you're aware of is Chateau Chamont, the Dan Preston's property over in the
Right. Yep.
cruise.
Yep.
They're putting the copper roof on the very tops of all the
Yes.
mansard portions
Right.
because it has a long-term lifespan.
Mm,
Um, and I don't have a problem with something like that.
yeah.
A lot of
It's
people in the United States will pay extra to have that now because now it's an expensive option.
it looks to me like they've done the building and then thought, oh yeah, we best replace the roof. Realised that it's going to cost probably 100,000 euros to replace the roof, and thought, what's the cheaper option? We'll get a steel frame built and just clad it with with steel sheets.
Aluminum sheets or zinc or
Yeah.
whatever.
What's your thoughts,
Um,
Andy?
but the inside is very traditional construction.
Andy's shaking his head there. Look.
Uh, But the inside of the property is like traditional stick
Oh,
built.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it is a lovely house inside.
I, you know,
Andy, say something. I
there's absolute silence there.
know. That'd be a no then.
You know.
Okay.
I mean, architecturally, like Glenn says, I mean, there's probably fine, no problems. But technically, for me, just if anything's out of the ordinary, too much like that, one, people aren't going to want to touch it. People in the future, like tradesmen, that kind of stuff. The marriage of two di different materials is always a problem, and I mean, just for
There, ex
maintenance wise, it's going to be a
if
nightmare.
yeah, if
Uh,
there's a problem, it can be an expensive
yeah,
repair. But the lifespan on them, for the most part, is pretty good.
yeah,
Um,
agreed. Depends when it was done, how well it's been maintained, and what
It
materials
looks
you use.
relatively
But
recent. I would say in probably the last 5 years because they've, you can see from inside they've sat the steel frame on concrete pads on top of the walls.
okay. And it's
let's say no.
masonry exterior walls or
No, it's stone.
no?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's stone. It's obviously an old stone barn.
No, so
Huh?
no. If this was what do you call it? X Factor. So
Yeah.
no.
Uh,
I've just seen so many things like that and so many different things like that. It just always turns out to be a hassle and more
yeah,
problems than it's worth.
yeah.
You know.
I just wonder
Did you
whether it'd
guys
be really noisy, actually.
get any of that wind from
Oh yeah.
Isles?
Yeah, definitely.
So
Yeah.
that came through here yesterday, and not so much right here in the village. but other areas, because I had to go out and, run errands and stuff, I was seeing a lot of tiles, on the roadways and the
Right.
gardens. And I'm just curious. I fortunately no problems here. But I keep hearing that those tile roofs, the clay tile roofs, can be outrageously expensive. I don't know because I've never had to work with one, replace one personally.
Yeah, you're correct. Clay tile roofs are not expensive in the materials as such, but the labor is very intensive.
What
Um,
about the slate?
Slate,
We don't
it
have slate
depends.
so much here, but
Well, the area I live, which is northwest, it's virtually all slate.
Yeah,
So
yeah. It's funny, certainly when you drive up from the south of France, you can see the evolution in, the materials used in building and certainly in the roofs, with the pantiles in the south. And
yeah,
the further north you get, the more and more slate,
tile,
as you
slate
say.
you get.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you kind of see that transition when you get to like the Dordogne area,
right.
kind of central. You
Yeah,
start seeing the gradual change.
yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah, for sure. So I don't know if you know, but I've got another house which is in near Poitiers. Um, no, it's near Bressuire. Um, so that's about 2 hours south of where I am. And I know that when I travel from where I am to there, the change in the roofing and the construction of the building is quite
Mm,
substantial. And
Hmm.
if you look at a map and you see worldwide map and you see Brittany where I am now, and there's like I don't know, like a wa not a wave, but a track across, and it covers Ireland, Scotland, Northern Scotland, Northwest France, the Celtic regions, in fact.
yeah, yeah.
When you have that, you have slate roofs, stone built, and you can see that reflected in England and Ireland. So Ireland is stone built, slate
Never thought of that
roofs.
actually. That's
Yeah,
a really good point. Yeah.
and it's actually quite noticeable. And then when you drop down just as far as Nantes, so then you're out of that region and you
Mm.
start going south of Nantes, you'll start to see the pantile or the clay roofs. And they descend and then they change even more when you get further down.
It's the
But
bloody Celts coming over here, isn't
well, yeah, I mean, well,
it?
you think
Coming
of
over
what,
here with their slate. Who do you think now?
yeah. Oh, it's interesting to think of what ask what Glen thinks about that historically I suppose with Brittany being uh, part of France, not part of France, part of France, not part of France. But I suppose the influence is there for building how you
It
build the
came from the
rooms there.
UK. They came from the UK, and like Normandy being adjacent to Brittany,
Yeah.
you see that same thing as well. I was working with a client up in Normandy 3 years ago, 4 years ago, um, and driving around that area, I felt like I was in the UK because it's all stone built, slate roofs. Um, and that's great. It's beautiful. Um, I can't say anything negative about it. But you do see that line of kind of like demarcation as you come further south.
It's interesting because it's not something I've really noticed in the UK, especially. I don't know in America if that's the case because it's so vast, America. But the change would be probably more gradual. But in the UK, it's
Yeah.
very small.
And it's interesting in the US because the climates are so different throughout the country. Down in the Gulf coastal states, Florida, Mississippi, Louisiana, new construction, you have a lot of flat roofs because there's not a lot of rain. Um, and then when you get to like parts of Louisiana and eastern Texas, you have very steeply pitched roofs because there is
Yeah,
a
I've
lot of,
seen that. Yeah.
and the flat roof also goes out to the desert Southwest, New Mexico, Arizona. New England, you'll see the steeply pitched roofs because snow has to
Yeah.
slide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and then it's mid-America, the heartland, you'll have steep, you'll have pitched roofs, but they're not as steep. They're just a little shallower because, well, to be honest, nothing really happens in the heartland, but they build baseball fields in the middle of cornfields, but
I'm just looking. Right. This is a burning question. What do you think about Elon Musk's involvement right at the beginning? Do you know right at the beginning of the Trump presidency, he brought Elon Musk
Mhm.
in to what was it, Department of Governmental Efficiency, which happens to be the same, Doge happens to be the same
Doge.
name as his crypto coin. But anyway, we'll brush past that. But what did you think of him bringing Elon in and then it all falling apart very quickly afterwards?
Um, it was a huge mistake. I mean, he was giving permission and power to someone, not an elected official, has been publicized in the media for the whole time, but you know, you're giving someone else with the inflated ego opportunity to, well, it was kind of like a battle of the egos. Who was going to win that one? And of course, um, Trump's still in office, but he was elected and Musk was not. Um, and then,
Probably being the richest man in the world probably takes the edge off of that.
well, yeah, yep. Um, and, that just goes in line with Trump wanting his billionaire friends to pat him on the back and let him do what he wants to do, in my opinion.
Right.
And then, Musk was having huge issues with the Cybertruck then because, you know, well, in the United States, I don't know if there are any Cybertrucks here in the EU. I
Nope.
haven't seen any.
No,
I
it's
think there was
not.
Um,
issues with the classification of it, wasn't there?
yeah,
Passing
they
all
were,
the safety stuff on it.
yeah, there were just so many issues with, the batteries. They'd catch fire. They were not reliable. Just because he rushed to get it out, apparently. Um, and now he's got some other car he's trying to introduce, which I saw in the news just in probably the past week. Um, but he lost billions in stock value. So is he still the richest man? I don't know.
Well, I
But
think he
that
is.
was just not. Why did he
Well, it
do
went
that
round
other
for him.
than to have his cronies supporting him? And he had basically gave him permission to do things that he should not have had access to.
Well, lots of government workers, equivalent of the civil service, like people who work for the government that make everything run, that make sure the wheels turn. They were all sacked, and that just leads to inefficiency and more spending of money. So he didn't really achieve anything. It was just
No,
it could be classed, I guess, as a publicity stunt. I think more than anything else,
that's a good way to look at it.
because
I would agree
he's not
with
there
that.
now, is he? So yeah, probably that. Another question is, Donald Trump has removed the birthright citizenship. So if you're born in the US and you're a child of an undocumented immigrant, before you would, if you're born in the US, you're you're American.
Hmm.
He's removed that right from people. So in effect, babies and children can be removed if they're born from undocumented parents, which is a big change. from what it was
I,
before.
I think that's a constitutional violation
Oh,
of one of the
doubts.
many.
Kind of
Yeah,
surprised.
because I because there are, if you go back historically, there are many people up until what, the 1800s who were immigrants to the United States and even into the 1800s who became citizens just automatically because they were here, um, or there. So I think that was written into the Constitution. I don't recall all of that off the top of my head, but I think he's now broken yet another constitutional. Um,
Because he doesn't seem to worry too much about that, does he? Because he doesn't get any kind of comeback from anybody.
mm-mm.
I think he's actually read
So,
the Constitution.
What's
no,
that?
no.
Do you think he's actually read the Constitution at any point?
No, no, I don't think he has. I
He
think he
did
has.
say that
I
he
think he has
wanted.
one single time shared brain cell, personally.
Thomas, yeah, right.
He did say that he was trying to challenge the concept of judicial review by suggesting that presidents don't answer to the federal courts and even threatening judges with impeachment that says his policies are unlawful. I mean,
You know, toward the end of his, well, it's in between his first presidency and this one. The Supreme Court ruled that if it was in the interest of the United States, he could make almost any decision he wanted.
hmm.
And he's taken that to heart to mean I have free reign to do whatever the hell I feel like doing.
Is there any mechanism? Is there any checks and balances? Because I know I spoke with Colin and a couple of episodes ago, and we said something, and Colin said, "Look, I'd like to think there are checks and balances that we can limit his power, or, uh, but I'm not too sure, to be honest.
The
I
way the
don't know
Constitution, yeah, the way the Constitution was written, you have the three branches of the government, executive, judicial, um, I'm drawing a blank on the third one. Um, but that was your checks and balances. Any one of them could cancel out a decision that was not a good decision. Let's leave it at that. Um,
Right.
and at this point, he, he has gone past that, and people are just giving him carte blanche. Um, the Supreme Court does kick back on him at some times, get some pushback. And I think it's interesting that the judges, several of the judges that he appointed, have been the ones leading the pushback on his decisions. But then you have some that are just doing what they're basically his doing whatever he says. That just I'm going to do this. They're just as corrupt as him. But the that's the judiciary side. The other piece is the Senate, and the House of Representatives. They can also speak up against anything he's doing, but they're not because right now it's a Republican-led House.
I struggle with how it all works in America, to be honest. You can have a
It,
president of one party, but then the house is controlled by another party, and you're like, oh, how does that work then? They really struggle. I mean, it's similar in France, I think. You can have a block, you can that things can't get through. But yeah, it is very interesting. Uh,
that's where you look at the bipartisan, even though both sides have different values and ways of looking at things, you're supposed to be able to negotiate and do what's best for the
for the
people.
nation, yeah.
But they're like little kids in a sandbox. I've got my corner and you've got your corner, and we're going to fight and duke it out. And one of us will win, and it may not be the best decision made.
But the person or the people that lose are the American public. And when when they go into shutdown because they can't authorize the budget,
Yep,
lives are lost because of that. And people don't
exactly.
realize it,
Yep.
and you just think, oh my God, they're going to authorize it in the end. So just get on with it.
Dude, the
Uh,
whole is, when you look at the Bill of Rights, which are all the revisions to the Constitution, and you have the ones like freedom of speech, number one, and Trump and his minions are saying, no, you don't. If you say anything about us, then we'll come after you.
so
That's like any social media when you go into the US now. I'm
I was
not going
just
down,
going to, yeah, yeah.
because they're going to find out that they don't want me. Um,
And-
um, but that brings
He
up
said
another.
having
I have a
he said
state department,
having just been running Trump down on social media for 3 hours.
and but
Didn't think that all
they
the way
want to
through
see
there, Glenn, did
anything
you?
you put on social media. He wants all your social media accounts. Well, I also have a State Department passport, so I don't know how that's going to go across.
It's kind of sad because I in 2006 I went to New York for a holiday. Loved it. I
Hmm.
actually genuinely loved it. I don't think I'd live there, but then there's plenty of places I visited that I won't want to live there, but are great to visit.
Right.
And New York was one of them. And I really enjoyed like looking at the sights and just experiencing the difference in the culture. The problem now is I wouldn't go, and I certainly wouldn't take anyone with me just because of those restrictions you just mentioned. The possibility of having to hand your phone over and it being checked. And I've just read it's 10 years worth of emails if they request it.
Jesus.
Yep.
And that's
It,
the result it has is people like me who enjoyed the holiday in 2006. In fact, I went to the site of September the 11th and I was looking at the site and it was before it was all rebuilt. And I was like, there was a little museum for it. And I went round and it was really moving, like all the stuff that had gone on. And I went and I actually went to the 14th or 13th, no, 13th precinct and spoke to some of the officers there because I was actually in the UK police at the time.
mhm.
And they took me around the whole station. It was brilliant. I mean, it was such a good holiday. I exchanged some. I knew that they loved UK police uniforms, so I took a suitcase full of it, just gave it out to people. Yeah, they loved it.
Awesome.
They loved it. And do you know what? They were so nice. I went to the Staten Island ferry, and the transit police that were there. One of the guys was there. He'd got a medal for what he did in September the 11th. And we got chatting and we were really good friends. In the end, he took his medal off and he gave it to me, and I've got it downstairs in a drawer.
Oh, wow.
He was absolutely top guy, top guy.
I worked
And
in
that
St. Louis.
experience of a holiday, even
Hmm.
as good as it was, I would never go back to America just simply because of these rules and the way that it's being done now.
Okay.
It's just ridiculous.
It's
I
it's
must be missing out on
pseudo
so much.
police state because of that. Um, they're watching everything you're doing, and they want to know everything you did historically, and probably want to know anything you're going to do in the future.
So
Um,
here's a virtually impossible question for you, Glenn. Um, if you could jump into a time machine and go forward 5 years and go back to where you lived in America,
mhm.
um, what would you find when you stepped out of the time machine?
Well, I lived in Boston, and Boston's a very liberal city, probably one of the most liberal next to San Francisco. in the United States. Very well educated population because of the number of universities that are there. There are some issues there because of what's going on in the government, but Boston's got a way of fighting back. And if I were to go back, step out of the time machine and find myself in downtown Boston, I would feel like I was, in a sense, at home because it's such an amazing city. Um, but I do feel like I would see some definite changes because there's also a very large immigrant population there.
At the
Uh,
moment.
what's that?
I said, at the moment there is.
Yeah, yeah. And then if I were to like go back to get out of the time machine on day two, I was born in Texas, which is equally as conservative as the United States. Um, Governor Abbott is not much better than President Trump. Um, I would be fearful to step out of a time machine in Texas right now. I love my home state for the geographic diversity. I hate the politics there because it is mimics that of the United States as well as the state of Florida doing the same thing. So
I
I'm
think
glad I'm here.
I think as a foreigner, if you like, or no, as an observer from the outside, we don't realize that it's the United States of America. So each state is very different from the others.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
And we just look at it from the outside and think it's America.
The whole,
Mm.
but each state is quite a bit different. It's sort of like, let's look at France, and then we have like Brittany, the Charente, Nouvelle-Aquitaine, the Aude, the Ariège. So each of those departments would be a state, but I think here, just from my 3+ years of tenure here, they're more succinct. There's a lot more in common, whereas in the United States, each state is very proud of its identity.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
some are very, very conservative, some are liberal, some, middle of the road.
Mm.
Um, and those states that are very conservative, Florida, Texas, um, there's just District of Columbia, which isn't really a state. Um, the desert Southwest, some of the states there, New Mexico, Arizona, um, and the heartland, all the Iowa, Nebraska,
So,
they're
so,
conservative. They're conservative. They're very red states in political terms.
so where does Minneapolis fit in all this then?
Minneapolis is like the northern part of mid-America, the heartland, and it's right on the border with Canada.
Mm.
Um, and I've never known anything to be aware of anything radical going on in Minnesota. Um, so I'm very perplexed by why ICE has just like invaded it.
I,
And
I, I find it so bizarre. Sorry to interrupt, but which I do quite often, is if it was a southern state bordering Mexico or something like that, okay, yeah, I can see you sending immigration enforcement, yes, but a state that I just don't get it. I just don't
it
get it.
borders the US's number one trade partner.
Exactly.
Um, it I'm perplexed by it. That's all I can say.
So what's your thoughts? Is it like publicity stunt or I mean it's cost people lives, obviously.
It cost, yeah, several lives. Um, I think I think it is, in a sense, a political stunt. Let me show how strong I am, how many arms I can bend. Um, and then, I saw something in the news last few days where they're going to start pulling a number of ICE agents out
Yep.
of Minnesota and Minneapolis, but that means it's going to go somewhere else. He's
Yeah.
not going to give up on that. He's going to focus on another state, another region, and do the exact same thing until he gets his hands slapped enough again
Mm.
to focus on something different. And
So, do you think I could drag us kicking and screaming back to a subject that you're all a bit of an expert in,
okay,
uh, Ben? So, your house, uh,
here,
yes, is. Am I correct in thinking that it's built into the Bastide Wall?
yes,
Yeah.
yes.
So, can you just
This,
explain to people that what a Bastide is and the benefits, the pros and cons of having a house built into the Bastide Wall? So, just give us an idea of
okay.
the construction
So
and all
in
of it.
simplistic terms, a bastide is like a fortified city or fortified village, town, whatever. Um, it dates from the medieval era.
Yeah. Why would they need a Bastide?
I'm sorry,
Why do you think they would need a Bastide?
to
Why do you think they would need
to
a walled town?
fight off to
Who would be
defend
coming to
against
take the offer?
enemies, rivals.
Mm.
Um, I mean, look at Carcassonne, which is just a huge bastide.
Yeah.
Um, in this region of France, there are many small villages that are fortified or were fortified, and you can see it in the way the center part of the village is laid out. Um, and it was for defensive purposes. And many of them are sitting on the tops of small hills because you get the view and you can see your rivals coming across the plain.
Oh,
Um, no different than where I live here in Axad. I'm in the old medieval section of the village. We're on a hill, and then you've got the river valley down below, where you could see, good distance. You see people, your enemies coming up. It's interesting if you look at history. The Dax family was the family that sort of controlled Axad. The old chateau and fortress are here. But historically, if you go back to when this was a separate country, and that's also part of the reason for Bastides, is this was a separate country at one time, and Louis the 14th wanted to annex it into France. So, to from a historical perspective, the Dax family here married the Aragon family into the Aragon family of Spain to combine forces to ward off the advance of Louis the 14th. Well, he eventually got it, but that's why you have the Catalan language, Catalan flag. If you go to a sporting event, say a rugby event, they play the Catalan national anthem at events. It's very interesting, but it was all for protective purposes. The back portion of my house, which is this way, was one of the original guard towers for the fortress. And this part where I'm sitting now, going forward to the street, was built um, 250 years later.
sure. So, what are the benefits of having a house in the position that yours is in? And are there any
Today,
cons to it? Yeah,
today,
sure. Yeah,
just a historic, it's kind of a cool spot.
yeah,
Um, I I like it. It's very densely populated because everything's built right up against one another.
sure.
And as if you were to go down into what's called the lower village down along the river, you know, most of that was built post World War II. So it's,
Um,
you've got houses with gardens
yeah,
and more. But this is, you know, through that wall behind me, 1 meter thick wall, there's another
mm,
house.
right. So, what are the practical considerations if anyone was thinking of buying a house on, that's
It's really
stuck
kind of
on
a
the side
person.
of a
I
bus?
would
So,
say,
what are the everyday practicalities? Like, where do you park your car? That's the first thing that comes to
yeah,
mind.
that's the issue. Here in the center of any of these Bastide towns, parking is basically non-existent.
Mm.
Um, there may be little pocket areas. Like I park about 50 meters up the street. There's what used to be the Marie, the old Marie, when this was still just a very small village here on the hill. Um, and then there was a school there. So what was at the schoolyard is now a parking lot for about 6 cars. I park there. Um, you know, if I'm having to unload stuff from the car, like groceries or some, building supplies, I just come down the street, park at the front door, unload, and then go park the car. Quite often, though, I end up having to park in the large parking lot by the Marie, um, because there is a large parking lot there behind that building, which is, I think, built in like the 30s or 40s.
So how old is your house?
The oldest part here
Yeah.
is 1500.
Wow.
That's like
Has
3 o'clock.
meter thick walls. Um, yeah, it's interesting when I started the renovations on it because I'm doing a restoration because it got historical significance. Um, we found, well, behind the wall you can't see here. There in the kitchen because I took down. There's a wall right here that I took down to open up. But the back of the house is sort of built into the Bastide wall, and it is built into the Bastide wall. But when we were working in the kitchen, we opened up the wall to do some work. We found the original fireplace from 1500 behind
Wow.
the wall. Um, it was, I looked at the contractor and was like, we got to stop this because I want to see what's going on. My first thought was, let's rip out this whole back of the kitchen, expose that fireplace, um, and kind of incorporate it. Well, as we were looking further into it, when they, at some point when they added the central heating system, probably at post World War II, I'm going to say,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
and then they were adding power at some point, they ran the plumbing for the heating system and the conduits for all the upper floors through the fireplace.
Of course.
It made
That's
sense.
actually quite common.
And I was thinking, well, I can't do that work now because it's going to mean a major mechanical
Yeah,
renovation.
yeah.
So
Back to
we just
production.
closed it back up. But I know
Yeah.
it's back there.
That's brilliant. Ah,
I could
I'd like to
walk
look at
under, I
that.
could walk under the
Oh,
mantelpiece. It was that big. Um,
brilliant.
it was pretty interesting. And every now and then I will look at it and think, oh, man,
So, doing all that restoration to a historical building, how many forms did you have to fill in?
a lot.
A lot.
I can imagine. Oh my God.
And it's hard to find people to qualified to work on it because if you have to get permission, like I can't do anything to the outside of the building without permission. Inside, I could do anything I wanted. Um, but the problem is the Monument Historique and the Historic Society Association, if you've got any sort of historical significance, you have to have certified tradesmen
Mm.
to do the work. Um, and this front wall over there, which was built in the 1700s when the house was expanded, there used to be a balcony and French doors that went out to that balcony from this room. Well, in World War II, there was a bombing here. The Germans used the train line through here to move supplies. It was bombed to stop the Germans. But in doing so, there was damage to the front of the house. And when they repaired it, it's just like repair job. The diagnostic report talked about it though. 1949, this was done, this was done, this was done. And I'm like, okay, so that's got to be World War II. So just to open that wall required like a whole ream of paper.
Hmm.
Oh,
So,
And they still can't get people to work on it because no one wants, they have to close the street because the street's only 2.4 meters wide.
Jesus Christ.
The scaffolding has to go up. And most of the tradesmen that have looked at it don't want to work on scaffolding. And they have to close the street to do it. And you can only do it twice a year in the spring and the fall.
Oh my God.
Because there's a huge summer population here. In the summer, there's always stuff going on. You can't have the primary street on the hill closed off. And it's only a
so,
one street.
one other thing that occurs to me is that most Western towns and villages are tourist areas. So, when I saw you last, you told me a brilliant story about a tourist couple wanting a cup of coffee. So just retell that
Oh
for me, could you?
yeah. Yeah. I love this one.
Oh my God. So coming up this side of my house is a public, it's a pedestrian street. It's a real street, but it's a staircase. Um, it goes up into the old fortress. And so quite often in the morning, you know, I'll open the balcony. There's a balcony on that side of the house too, over the stairs. So I open those doors. Sometimes I'll open the kitchen door, which goes out to that stairway as well, because the coffee pot's in that corner. And I'll be standing there, t-shirt, boxers, making my cup of coffee, like, oh, come on, get in that cup so I can drink you. And this couple just walked in and they said, oh, we can smell coffee. Is this a coffee shop? Can we buy a cup? I was like, this is quite interesting. And I was talking to the mayor about it one day shortly afterwards, and he goes, well, you do have that bistro table sitting outside that door. And if coffee's going through the door, I said, yeah, I should charge €1 for a cup of coffee and €1 for a croissant, and then send them on their merry way up into the fortress.
Oh,
I mean,
brilliant.
I was just totally blown away. They just walked right in.
Did you make him a coffee?
No. It was
Ah.
more at that point, I wanted my coffee. Besides, Drake was kind of like, who are these people? Drake being the dog. He was like, who are these people that just walked in your house?
Brilliant.
Oh my God. But that's happened quite a few times actually. And I'm seriously thinking about it. And people get to the top, they get to the top kind of where the kitchen door is, and then you can break off either direction to go up even further into the old fortress. And I have more conversations with people that get there and they're like, which way do we go? And if I'm standing there, I go, well, you can go either way because it's going to end up it does a loop. It comes back to the same spot, just further
Wow.
up. Um, but it's actually a good conversation starter. I love the fact that I've met so many people just looking for directions. And I use it as one of my neighbors, she's 84, um, born and raised here. I use it as like a terrace. So there's lots of plants coming up the stairway now. It used to be just stairs. And she came over and she was looking at it one day. She always likes to supervise what I'm doing.
Obviously.
Do you remember the TV show Bewitched?
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. Remember the character Gladys Kravitz?
Yeah.
Always looking out the windows.
Yeah.
Okay, that's her. And I love her to death. Um, she's looking at it one day. I called it the garden staircase. She goes, no, 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 no. The jardin d'escalier. I was like, oh,
Ah,
that's much better.
yes,
We
it
like
does
that.
sound better, to be honest.
Brilliant.
And
Right. Well, sadly, Glenn, we're running out of time again.
oh no.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
I think we've covered quite a bit of ground there.
Yeah.
Quite a polarizing conversation.
Yeah. I don't I don't miss the United States. I miss people. I don't miss the country for
There's
what.
Drake. I see Drake in the background.
Yeah, Angelina Jolie, the actress, made a comment to someone I saw it in the news not too long ago that the country that she knew as a child no longer exists.
Mm,
And I kind of agree with that.
mm.
that's how you feel, is it?
Yeah.
Mm.
And when you look at France today, and I think about this anytime I'm driving somewhere, France today is what the United States and was probably the late 40s, 50s, and early 60s.
Yeah.
It's old
People have said the same
school.
thing about the UK, actually.
Yeah, and it just,
Mm.
when I driving along a road and they have like the little picnic areas along the side, and you think back to when I was, growing up in the late 50s and 60s and early 70s, you know, you'd always see people at these little roadside areas having picnics while they're going
Yeah,
from point A to point B. And I see that here, and most of them are along rivers or in little park-like areas. And they're all laughing and having fun. And some of them even have their petanque pools out and they start playing petanque, ad hoc on the side of the rest area, picnic area. And you don't get that in the United States anymore. At least I
Okay,
haven't.
so as I say, we are running out of time. So let's not leave it so long next time, Glenn.
That sounds good.
Yeah,
I miss you
and
guys.
I'd like to thank you so much for your valuable time.
oh, absolutely.
Really,
Yeah.
really appreciate it. And
I've enjoyed it. It's great to see
it's
you guys.
yeah, it's been an education as usual. And yeah, so thank you so much, and thank you so much for watching, everyone. Andy, is there anything that you'd like to add?
No, that's it. Loved it. Loved it.
Okay, Glenn, is there
Yeah.
anything that you'd like to add?
Until next time.
There you go.
Next time.
So
So
you should,
thanks so much
are
for
you going to
watching.
show pictures of that barn-like house?
Yeah, yeah, I'll send you a picture. I'll
Okay.
send you a link. Yeah, yeah. All right. So give the video a thumbs up. Maybe think about subscribing if you're not subscribed already. And it's goodbye from me.
It's goodbye from him.
Wait, mind how you go, and I'll see you soon.
That's on the other channel.
Uh,